I'm producing this, what I anticipate will be a series of videos for a variety of reasons. One of which is that I've often experienced that common human delusion that because I have an idea in my head, I understand it completely. How couldn't I? It's my idea. Only to discover immediately upon being asked or needing to express that idea to someone verbally, I don't have any idea what I'm thinking. The stumbles and the stammering, the searching for words, and what that has taught me is that until you actually put an idea into a form that can be communicated to someone else in some way, you cannot be certain that you really understand what you're thinking. So, if nothing else, these videos will help me achieve some level of certainty that I know what I'm doing and I understand how to go about it. The other important motivation is that at 62 years old, my educational experiences in school all took place before the creation of the internet. And that may not sound important, except that as someone who, from my first days that I recall, was and remains fascinated by books and information and all topics imaginable, I spent hours, days, maybe even weeks in libraries trying to find little bits of information, and sometimes never actually succeeding. Information was very difficult to acquire before the internet, such that it makes us complacent now to realize that the most arcane question can be answered in somewhere in the frame of a nanosecond. And that has enriched my life dramatically, really by orders of magnitude. The internet has brought me great enjoyment and a richness that didn't exist before. And that interests me in that it's something that I want to contribute to and to add my thoughts to its store of information, whether greeted or ignored. But also because I really see the internet as being one of the most important developments in the history of our species. I don't know how it will play itself out. I haven't any idea in that respect. It's obvious what some of the things that are happening. It's reshaping cities and cultures overnight. But at some chronological distance, it's going to be clear that this was a revolutionary moment in human existence. And if only for its ability to keep us all alive, and I don't mean that in the spiritual way or the egotistical way, but it allows us to know that we've made a contribution, or at least attempted to. And in line with that, it's something that we don't think about now, but we're so far removed from that moment. But the internet and its appearance is very similar to what happened with the introduction of movable type, the printing press. Movable type and its generation of affordable books changed the human species. It changed the way we see the world. It changed the way we think of ourselves, in that it afforded us, it marked the first time in human history when some significant percentage of the species read in silence to themselves. Prior to that, illiteracy was the greatest hurdle, and even if you had some level of literacy, that didn't mean you had access to books. And especially after the fall of Rome and the the Dark Ages, which is Petrarch's term, not mine, Christianity had a vested interest in preventing people from reading and gaining knowledge for themselves. Because the longer they were, the members of the church were illiterate, that meant they had to come to the priest for advice on everything. There was no other source. And that meant control. Which is why they attempted to destroy all the legacy that Greece and Rome left, which was only discovered or rediscovered, Renaissance, in what we now refer to for that reason as the Renaissance. And it's ironic because that only happened given the Catholic Church's greed, which it expressed through the Crusades, which ended up bringing back all of that information from, big surprise, the Muslim world. They are the ones who had preserved it, seeing that it had value, and they were the most advanced culture on earth at that time. What happened is another issue of history. So that I believe that whatever effect the internet ultimately has, because it's going to take a few more years to know, it's going to be equally important as to what happened in the Renaissance with the explosion of literacy and available books and knowledge and information and ideas. So it feels important for me to at least attempt to make this contribution. And I apologize for the somewhat pretentious and wordy title of the video, but it was meant simply as clickbait, and because I wanted to attempt to fully explain the general topic I'm dealing with in a way that wouldn't be confused with a lot of other things. But really, I'm talking about the book as a format or venue for the presentation of text, which is accompanied by photographs, which is an amalgam that's as old as modernity in newspapers, right? Before it was a photographic image, it was a drawing meant to depict the actual setting or scene when it wasn't a caricature or a cartoon. So that I intend to show you this project I've embarked upon, which is, speaking plainly, a photographic book. Meaning, it's a book that somewhat implies text, but it also has photographs. So it's like a big newspaper. And rather than lose you all, if I haven't already, we'll go out right now and take a look at what I've done so you can see if you're even interested in continuing to watch this. So, as promised, here is the physical book as it exists now. It's probably not easy to make out what's going on here because it's painted with about 20 coats of acrylic lacquer. So it's as reflective as a mirror, other than the fact that it's black. Probably can't see the title that I engraved on the front here with a CNC mill, or actually router. And at this point, as you can see, there's nothing inside. I just put that there so you can see that. Again, probably not apparent, but I put this on a Bridgeport, and this is actually a 45-degree bevel, just like a mat. So the case opens to the first page, which will have the title in the same place as you open it, typography. And it'll carry this picture, which is actually a photograph my apartment in San Francisco, the tiny little asylum, which is where the story I intend to tell begins. So, like I said, this is finished, but not complete, in that it still needs to be rubbed out again. But I wanted to get everything put together because I need to design pages. And I'm going to print those out on a big Epson printer we have. And the page size is 30 by 22. So, well, I'll show you that in a second. But as you can see, and I made this little stand for the lid. It's just 6160 and 1-inch square tube that I welded together. This case, just to give an overview, is made of 6160T aluminum sheet, which is a 1/4 inch thick. So this thing's very heavy, which is fine. It was never meant to be easily mobile. It's transportable but not mobile. And again, probably not able to tell, but this is 3-inch channel. So the depth of this thing is 3 inches, and it'll be filled up by pages which are anchored back here. You can't see that, but there's a clamp there for all the pages, which will be printed on Moab Natural Entrada, the text anyway. I needed a case this size because I wanted to be able to include all the photographs I might have that I'd want to include, which include contact prints from 11 by 14 negatives, which is what this is. So I needed a page size that could easily accommodate a photograph that large and still leave room for text. And in fact, invite the text in terms of a design feature. So that's the physical object. I'll actually take the camera off the tripod and show you the details a little better without all these reflections. But right now, let me pause and show you the prototype. So this is the prototype, which I built some time ago. Wow, a lot of leaves around today. It's 100 degrees today, 101 right now here in Lake County. So, okay. So this is the prototype. It's just masonite with a piano hinge and some stripping fur to build how I thought I wanted it, and to allow me to choose the page size, which ended up being a matter of what paper was available in what dimensions, so I can buy it in a roll and easily just cut them down to size with as little waste as possible. So this is painted. I just painted it with a spray can, painted it blue, because the original plan was to have the aluminum blue anodized. This is actually black anodized, but I have to put the bottom on there. Roughed it up so the glue will stick. But after a while I thought that, and I'll go into this a bit more, I thought it was more appropriate to paint the case black for a variety of reasons that I'll explain. But and anodizing is very fragile and it cannot be repaired if scratched, whereas lacquer can. So this is the prototype. I haven't worked on this thing in a long time, so pieces of it have fallen away and been taken off to use in other dummies and stuff like that. So you can't really tell, but the name would go here, or the title would go here, and then my name, and it would open to this first page, which is where the actual text begins, or is taking place. And then this would just be the next, it was just, no, there's a third picture here. I can't remember what it is. It's fallen off, but there'd be these 3 contact prints from 6x9 negatives. And then that begins the fun and challenge of page design. There's also another photograph that goes here. Again, I don't recall what it is, but it'd be something like that. And what I'm trying to do here is create a canvas, really, to engage in typographical design, to have fun with typography. And these are just mock-ups and ideas, and I printed the text out on crummy paper and just taped it in, glued it in. But one idea that I like and will actually be carried out through the book is having this book within the book that allows me a little gallery or portfolio when I don't want to stuff the pages with a lot of photographs, but I want the photographs available. So this text begins the story, which is about, I worked at the Port of San Francisco for many years as a truck driver, and hey, there's a truck, and just obviously spent a lot of time there. And so the text references that. It's probably not easy to make out, but in terms of typography design, this is black text, this is red, and actually the first line of the red text goes across and then down, then back over and across. The black goes like this, and then straight down and across. Just ways of designing an interesting page, playing with typography, and also affording me a way to deal with different times and contexts, so that I can use one of several mechanisms I've made available. I can use different colored inks, as I have here, or I can use different fonts within the typeface. It's a typeface, not a font. Drives me nuts. So the typeface, I could use italic, light, bold, whatever, in order to distinguish different voices, different stories, different time. And so I designed a number of pages just to play around with this canvas, what I have to work with. So then this would be the second page, which is where the narrative continues in downtown San Francisco, where I've lived for, I don't know, 30 years, something like that, in the same apartment. And just back and forth between, it's episodic because it's basically a journal. And one of the things I like about this also is that it allows for the use of memorabilia and anything that I feel is part of the story, so that there's a reference to De Chirico, and I can print that out and put it there. No copyright issues, because I don't care. And no one is ever going to worry about it. It was an 11 by 14 in here too, I don't know what it was. But essentially this becomes a big scrapbook, or maybe more accurately, like a large magazine, a large spread in a magazine that has all sorts of, there's some more pictures, I don't know what was in there. I have it all on InDesign, all the files, but just playing around with different possibilities. And another gallery, I don't remember which one I planned there, but something's going on there. So that was the prototype that allowed me to determine all the measurements and materials, and eventually get to work on building the physical object I just showed you, which I'll now show you a bit more of from different perspectives. In trying to look at this thing on my table here, it's almost impossible to see. But I think from this angle you can see the height of the walls and also see how it's hinged. That's how shiny that paint is. You can't really even tell. And then yeah, you can't really see the title, can you? I don't know. Anyway, too reflective, right? But here's the bottom with the feet and polished to equal sheen. Maybe by just traveling with it, you can see more of, can you see the 45 bevel here? Like I said, which I just did on a CNC mill. And just for the sake of information, this is just part of the pile of fasteners that were left over after putting the case together. All that is simply a tube amplifier I'm restoring, audio amplifier, and sorry about that. So all the parts, just thousands and thousands, and took a long time just to accumulate all of the fasteners I needed.